What's up guys, Metal571 here, and today I'm going to talk about this really newfangled popular headphone called the HiFiMan HE400S. Now, let's start as usual with the build quality. Oh man. Alright, first of all, I'll explain the cable in a second, because that is not the stock cable. But before we get to that, so really, the build quality of these is not great. First of all, you're paying $299 for this headphone, and what do you get? You get plastic, you get some more plastic, you get some more plastic here, you get this somewhat chintzy headband, and there is a metal headband here, but the one that actually contacts your head is pretty cheap feeling. And these are actually not the stock pads either, which I'll get to a little bit in the sound section, but you'll want to replace the pads anyway. These are the Focus pads, I believe, the Focus velours. You can see that there's pleather around here, but the velour is on the inside. So first of all, you're paying $299 here to get a plastic headphone. Now, the HD600 is also, and if you watch my review of those, you'll see that I also complain about the build quality of those, but it really should be better. It really should be better. But the biggest problem with this headphone is the stock cable. Holy moly, the stock cable is bad. My buddy Keenex complained about it like crazy. Because it held its shape. It was very cheap feeling, and sure enough, within say a couple weeks or less, it developed a loose connection on both the left and the right side ear cup. That's right, this is a $299 headphone that probably comes with like a 10-cent cable. It boggles my mind how bad that is, and how much HiFiMan really cheaped out on this. And I'm sorry, but that's just exactly what happened to us, and it is how it is. So basically, when you pay, oh man, you know what I just realized? These covers actually slide a little bit too. Wow, that's oh man. I mean, the worst I've seen in build quality is probably the Grado. But man, these are even worse. I mean, for the price, these are really not. This is inexcusable. I'm sorry. HiFiMan is not really known for their build quality in general, so to me this isn't too surprising, but it's just really disappointing, that's all. So that's actually why I have this cable. This is a nice cable, and I bought this one on eBay. Any HD700 cable will be compatible pretty much with this headphone. And the connectors are 2.5mm mono on this one, and the other end is a nice quality solid jack with a screw-on connector, the way it should be. It's a short cable, but it's nice, it's braided, it's pretty good. It's basically an HD700 replacement, as I said. So that's what you want to buy. So first of all, you pay $299, and you should just chuck the stock cable. It's going to break on you anyway, and you get yourself a better cable. And then the next thing you want to do after you do that is you're going to want to get these ear pads, the Focus velour pads, if you really want to keep this headphone. So right off the bat, the price already increases by maybe somewhere between 50 and 80 bucks. Depending on how much you want to spend for the cable and stuff like that. But it's something to be aware of. Alright, I usually don't spend so much time talking about build quality, but it's pretty notable how bad these really are for the price, so there you go. Now as far as comfort goes, I thought they were really good actually. Comfort was actually excellent. Considering this is a planar magnetic open back headphone, comfort was surprisingly good. They don't weigh that much from what you'd expect from a planar magnetic, and your head just kind of floats here. And it's really comfortable. Not built well, but it's pretty comfortable. Okay, so let's talk about the sound. Right before this review, spent a good hour and a half forming some final impressions after listening to these for quite some time, as I do like to take my time with these reviews, don't I? And what I found was, starting out with the bass. Now, what are these really up against before I even say anything here? These are one of those headphones that's trying to kind of dethrone the HD600. And I say that because the HD600 is overall, I think, the more transparent headphone of the classic trio that I've talked about before, the DT880, K701, and the HD600/650. If you're not familiar with those headphones, I have reviews on the 880 and I have reviews on the HD600. You'll want to watch those. Specifically, I think my DT770, 880, 990 group review is better for the description of the 880 sound, and my K701 in comparison to Q701 should give you an idea of what the K701 sounds like. Alright, now with that out of the way, the bass on this, what is it like? It's not as good as planar bass should be. I mean, there is definition in the notes. There's nothing specifically wrong with the bass here, but it sounds like a dynamic, and I think other reviewers have said this before, and I quite agree. The bass on this goes lower than most dynamic headphones, or lower than some dynamic headphones, open back wise, but it's not that impressive. I expect a planar to really dig deep, and this just rolls off at the very bottom. I think it does a better job than the HD600 does in terms of extension, but maybe only by a bit, and that's kind of disappointing. But obviously there must have been some kind of cost cut with the drivers to make them not really sound that much better than a dynamic in terms of the bass. But just know that you're not going to get the same thing that planar magnetic headphones are known for, which is that incredible bass extension with these, despite them being planar magnetic drivers. The mids. I like the mids on these. I think I tend to like the mid-range on planar magnetic headphones, as so far I haven't heard any that are overly forward for me. The HE500 was right about down the middle where I prefer. These are pretty close to down the middle. The timbre sounds correct to me. The low mids are a little bit forward, and I forgot to mention the upper bass is a little bit more forward. If you look at an uncompensated response, the HD600 kind of has a bow shape in the upper bass low mid area, and these kind of had that flat shape that's kind of more like an Odyssey and planar magnetic headphones tend to sound. So to me they sound slightly off there, but not much. It's nothing I'm complaining about. If anything, it sounds pleasant. You know, there's nothing wrong with the low mids, and I think the upper mids sound pretty good on this headphone too. Now the problem though is with the treble. The treble on this kind of reminds me of a DT880. In fact, the whole sound signature of this headphone kind of reminds me of a DT880, except for the soundstage, which I'll get to in a bit. But the treble kind of sounds exactly as it measures on Tiles graphs. You'll see on Tiles graphs, the uncompensated response, you'll see a 6K peak, and you'll see a 9K peak. Then you go to the DT80 graph, you'll see a 6K peak, and you'll see a 9K peak. Now, are these as bright as a DT80? I don't think so. I don't have the DT80 on hand, so I'm not going to pass judgment on that immediately. But I will say that the treble on these is definitely forward and definitely more sibilant than the HD600. That much I am pretty damn sure of. And that's how the treble is, but the problem also with the treble is after EQing this thing, it doesn't respond that well, the EQ. I suspect ortho walls up there in the treble. If you don't know what that is, take a look at Superbest Audio Friends. They have an article on that for that phenomena on planar magnetics. That's what I suspect. I could be wrong, but the treble just sounds a little hazy, not particularly fast, not as detailed as the HD600's treble, especially in the very high register. As far as speed goes, it's not the speed demon of the treble department, despite being planar, and you might expect some really nice sparkly treble. It's just not as detailed. It's not as transparent in the treble, and it kind of has that sibilant edge that sounds slightly bearish, or Bayerish, however you'd like to pronounce that one. To me, that's what I get out of it, and that's interesting because it really does sound like the graph shows. The mids are not as forward as the HD600 at all. In fact, they're more in line with what I prefer, which I think some people may find recessed. But I like the mids. They're not bad. They sound right to me. They sound right, except the upper bass low mid is a little bit forward from the HD600, and the bass still rolls off. And basically this headphone is an inversion of the HD600 and very similar to the DT880. What I mean by that is the mids are not forward, but rather the treble is forward and the bass is more filled in than the 600. But the problem is it's not as transparent, it sounds a little bit hazier, and it just doesn't sound as hi-fi, if you will, as a result. There's just no getting around that. I mean, maybe an amp would make a difference. I should not say an amp, but maybe a different amp could make a difference. Somehow I doubt that. Other people can chime in on that one. I'm just using a Schiit Modi 1 and a Magni 2, which I think I've mentioned before, but that's what I have for testing. Now, soundstage-wise, I was pretty disappointed too. Now, that's relatively speaking here. I come to the point here where I want to say that as a reviewer, I've heard so many headphones that it's hard to impress me now. And I compare just about everything to the HD600 because it's hard to beat that headphone in terms of transparency and accuracy in its price range. And that's exactly what these guys are targeting. Do they beat it? I don't think so, in my opinion, overall. The soundstage on these has about the same width, I believe, as the 600s, which isn't super wide. The 600s tend to have a 3-blob effect, and I confirmed this again by listening. You basically kind of get some side to side, and you get some center, but you don't get a lot of imaging in between. However, these, it's just kind of blurry imaging. You can't really, the instrument separation is not as good on the 400S than the 600. It just doesn't seem as precise, and everything sounds a little bit hazy. It's kind of like a hazier DT880 without that, you know, pinpoint speed that the DT880 has. That's how I would really characterize this headphone overall. All right. So there you have it. That's what I think about the HE400S. Do I think it's worth it at $299, or really you're going to have to pay more than that because of the pads, which fill in the bass more, supposedly. I have not heard it with the stock pads. We'll have to be honest. But with these, it's supposed to fill in the bass a little bit more sub-bass, but it still sounds like it rolls off. Kind of like a dynamic, despite being planar magnetic, which is pretty strange to me, but that is how it sounds, and that's what I think of it. Do I recommend it overall? I mean, if you get a chance to hear this headphone, I wouldn't pass it up. It's interesting that a planar magnetic by HiFiMan can be put into the $299 category at all. Planar magnetic headphones tend to be pretty expensive. You take a look at Audeze, they've got the LCD2, LCD3, we're talking $999, $1999. LCDX is like a $17.99 headphone, really expensive stuff. And HiFiMan's known for their HE500, which used to retail for around, I think, $8.99, something like that. So then to put out a $299 headphone is already pretty impressive, but I don't really think it beats the 600, and especially after EQ, I really think I prefer the HD600 for sure. So I'm going to be comparing these against that headphone because that's what I feel like they're targeting, and do I think they beat it? No. That's the overall answer. I really don't think they beat it. Sure, maybe that makes me sound like a fanboy, but maybe it's confirmation bias. I have no idea. But for sure, from what I heard and what I think about this headphone, I think the 600 can still do better. That's even with EQ. Trying to EQ this was difficult. It didn't seem to mold to what I wanted. I would move the 6K, 9K peaks down and turn up the volume, and again, it would sound hazy again. It would just kind of like, the rest of the frequencies would come up, but the haziness and the ringing would just continue in the treble. And I didn't really get what I was looking for there. But the 600s can be molded better. I like that about them. The bass may be faster here, and I just want to EQ better, but the treble does not, and that really irks me. So, thanks for watching. Leave a comment if you have a comment and or a question, and I'll see you guys in the next review. All right, take care.